Legendary creatures may lurk in the shadows of the world's vast wilderness, hidden from the light of scientific knowledge. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the abominable snowman. They're often dismissed as science fiction or fantasy. But eyewitness accounts and photographic evidence of these creatures continue to stir controversy in the scientific community. Explorers first encountered some of these legendary creatures at the turn of the 20th century.
There was all of these explorations of new lands, of the deepest, darkest Africa, of Central South America, such as Brazil and the Amazon.
Even today, remote parts of the globe and large portions of the world's oceans remain unexplored. It is here in these remote regions where cryptids or hidden animals can live in seclusion and remain a mystery. These mysteries have fostered an entire field of study made up of researchers who believe the evidence is too strong to dismiss the existence of these creatures.
Cryptozoology is the study of hidden animals. Animals that haven't yet been discovered, aren't scientifically verified, but they're within the knowledge of human beings. So there's reports of them, there's sightings of them, there's evidence such as footprints or hair samples found.
Loren Coleman is a world-renowned cryptozoologist and author. His passion for cryptids began when he was just a child.
I was watching a science fiction film called Half Human. It was about reports of creatures that we now know as Yeti or abominable snowmen, and became very intrigued by this whole phenomenon of cryptozoology, that there were animals out there that seemed very real but had not been discovered or scientifically verified.
For centuries, myths and legends have been full of stories of unsuspecting wanderers encountering these strange and elusive beasts.
Several reports have often talked in elaborate stories and tales about animals that didn't seem real. The giant squid was this fantastic being with all of these arms and would pull down ships. So you have some of those myth and legend type stories that really are there before we get the facts.
What was once a myth turns to science when the existence of one of these fantastical creatures is confirmed.
The megamouth shark, for instance, wasn't known until 1976 when a boat pulled up a megamouth shark. There's only been a handful of megamouth sharks found. They're the second largest species of shark in the world.
There are other animals once thought to be fantasy, whose discovery was sparked by the mythical tales of the locals.
One of the logo animals of cryptozoology is the okapi, and the okapi is an animal that lives in the Belgium Congo. The colonial investigators would go in and they would hear stories from the pygmies of this creature that looked like a striped horse. In 1901, the okapi was discovered, and we know today that animal is extremely important because the stories from the native people preceded the discovery.
The giant squid, okapi, and megamouth shark have all been scientifically documented. Which of today's cryptids will be next? Legends of unidentified ape-like creatures have surfaced from Texas, Florida, and as far east as China.
The skunk ape, or Florida swamp apes, are seen mainly in the southern United States. They're like little chimpanzees. The Yerins of China is a little bit more related to Bigfoot, perhaps, as a creature. Now, the abominable snowman, for instance, the Yeti, is a much different creature. It's much more anthropoid. It goes down on all fours.
Cryptids are also rumored to inhabit the world's vast oceans and deepest lakes.
There is no doubt at all, in my opinion, that there are some strange creatures in other lochs and lakes around the world. Loch Morar on the west coast of Scotland, near a place called Maleg, there are stories of Morag, the Morar monster. A bit farther down, there's a loch called Loch Lochy, and there are stories of the kelpies of Loch Lochy. And then, of course, we have the Loch Ness Monster.
There was a lady called Courtney Latimer looking at a fish in the East London docks in South Africa. It was a coelacanth. It was a fish that, in the fossil record, had been extinct since the end of the Cretaceous. And of course, that has provided encouragement to the cryptozoological community ever since.
But cryptids are not limited to the ends of the earth and the depths of the oceans. They roam the skies as well. Legends of strange winged creatures go back for centuries.
Native American peoples for over 350 years have seen giant birds. They have encapsulated this into their legends and folklore by talking about thunderbirds. Thunderbirds with great power, thunderbirds being the ones that make the thunder and lightning in the clouds.
Recent reports of large flying beasts in New Jersey and West Virginia have residents wondering, are these cryptids fact or fiction? Local legend, native folklore, or fantastical creatures? The study of these hidden animals remains a largely misunderstood discipline.
Cryptozoology is not a fringe science. It's very well based in zoology.
It's the possibility of the unexpected find that keeps cryptozoologists like Coleman going.
I think that one of the reasons that people are so fascinated by cryptozoology is that everybody likes mysteries, everybody likes having stories that have yet to be solved. Cryptozoology really combines ecology, natural history, conservation, mysteries, adventure, and this exciting fact that we don't know everything that we think we know.
Coming up, from dense wilderness to deep lakes, join the hunt for two of the world's most famous cryptids. And later, the myth of the Jersey Devil lives on.
All you could see is those piercing eyes. And I tell you, I was scared.
Cryptozoologists say hiding in the Earth's most inaccessible places are species that have yet to be discovered. Whether it's lush jungles, dark oceans, or on the world's tallest mountain peaks, strange creatures have been reported in the most remote corners of the globe. But are these creatures real, or just the stuff of legends?
If there's legends or folklore, that might be of interest to cryptozoology because it may say something about a real animal actually existing, but no physical evidence existing yet.
Cryptozoologists are always on the lookout for these elusive and mysterious creatures, hoping to make the discovery of a lifetime. But it's the eyewitness account that is the first step to establishing a cryptid's existence.
I saw what I saw. It was something that shouldn't have been there, but was and is.
My heart's just like coming out of my chest going, oh my God, I can't believe this.
I definitely saw something. It was definitely something alive. And the curiosity took me over and said, no, I don't care what people say. I'm going to find out what it was that I saw that day in Loch Ness.
Today, the Scottish lake known as Loch Ness has become synonymous with the monster thought to inhabit its dark recesses. If the giant squid could go undetected for so many years, could the same be true for the Loch Ness Monster?
We've got this mystery at Loch Ness. We've got people seeing things at Loch Ness. Something has to be the explanation.
Over 700 feet deep, the loch is a 23-mile fissure scoured by glaciers during the last ice age. But what is the Loch Ness Monster? Many believe it is a prehistoric animal called a plesiosaur.
These are supposed to have died out 65 million years ago, but I was pretty sure that we were looking for plesiosaurs in the lake.
Others believe it is a giant eel or fish species that has yet to be discovered.
People started saying, is this a giant eel? Is it a giant dinosaur like a plesiosaurus? Is it a giant seal that hasn't been discovered? Is it some kind of gigantic creature that may be related to fish?
Until solid proof surfaces, the hunt for this underwater cryptid continues.
Who knows what we're going to find? 2 years ago, we found a trawler that had sank in 1923. And this is an area which has apparently been scoured by sonar for monsters on numerous occasions. If they can miss that, they can miss anything.
When you come to Loch Ness, you know that you are in the presence of something that nobody has yet been able to answer. And when you actually think about it, we can put a man in the moon, but we've got a simple little Scottish loch out there that's 800 feet deep, and we just don't know what's down at the bottom of that.
The loch's sheer size makes it hard to collect physical evidence. Without it, the thousands of eyewitness accounts are a cryptozoologist's most reliable lead, whether they're looking for the Loch Ness Monster or another legendary cryptid, Bigfoot. Hundreds of years after the first sighting of this ape-like creature, the hunt is still on.
There's two major fossil candidates for the classic Bigfoot. One is Gigantopithecus, which was a giant ape found in India and in China, in the foothills of the Himalayas, that lived 2 million years at the same time Homo erectus and then Homo sapiens lived, and may have been as large as 10 feet tall.
While Bigfoot has not yet been verified in the scientific community, reports from around the globe continue to pour in.
Bigfoot-type creatures have been seen all around the world. The Himalayas, the Pamirs, different parts of China, Russia, even in Europe. There were reports from South America. Amazon has reports. Up and down the Andes, there are certain reports of creatures. The concentration for North America, of course, is California, Oregon, Washington State, and British Columbia.
The mountains and pine forests of the Pacific Northwest are still pristine wilderness areas and the perfect habitat for a creature like Bigfoot.
Native peoples have been seeing these creatures since primordial times.
For years, reports of Bigfoot tracks in this area confirmed that this cryptid was leaving his mark. A construction crew working near Willow Creek, California, found superhuman-sized footprints on the moist shoreline.
I was employed by a Wallace Brothers construction company. We found a number of prints in the alluvial gravels on the borders of the creek, and a large number of people from Willow Creek would come out here looking for prints.
But Bigfoot wanted more than his prints on the cryptid Walk of Fame. He was ready for his close-up. In 1967, two hunters found much more than they were looking for in the woods.
Bob Gimlin and Roger Pedersen came around a bend and saw this creature getting up from squatting in the creek and started walking away. And so Roger quickly grabbed his camera and shot it. Roger was able to follow this creature with his camera into the woods, and it's a compelling piece of footage.
As compelling as it is, one good piece of film is not enough to convince skeptics of Bigfoot's existence. So the quest to find Bigfoot continues. Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster are the big stars of the cryptid world. But in the United States, there are other fascinating and frightening creatures that are capturing the minds of cryptozoologists and locals alike. Coming up, the story of this cryptid begins with a desperate mother's plea.
When she found out that she was expecting the 13th child, the unlucky 13th, she cried out in frustration, "I hope it's a devil."
And later, a giant winged beast strikes fear in the Midwest.
They didn't let young children out in the evening, fear that it might pick them up and fly off with them.
When most Americans think of New Jersey, they think of big cities and traffic. But take a detour off the crowded highways, and you'll discover a vast expanse of wilderness that most visitors never see.
New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the Union. Yet in the southeastern portion of the state lies the Pine Barrens, covering almost 1,000 square miles, which is rather sparsely populated.
There's still approximately about 1 million acres of habitat out here that is wild or semi-wild. And of course, some of the areas in the interior of the Pinelands are really quite wild.
The New Jersey Pine Barrens consist of over 1 million acres of forest, farms, and wetlands. It's a habitat for more than 1,000 species of plants and animals, including, perhaps, the Jersey Devil. Local lore says this flying cryptid has been calling the Pine Barrens home for nearly 300 years. Like most mythical creatures, accounts of his appearance vary greatly.
He was half man and half horse.
Like hooves and wings and like a reptile type body.
He got razor sharp tail and wings, and like the front of his face is like a horse.
A kangaroo-like body and eyes that glow in the dark and horns.
The Jersey Devil has made the historic town of Smithville famous. But visitors may also discover that, devil aside, this quaint town is a great spot for a family getaway and is rich in colonial history.
Smithville, the historic town, is a wonderful little town that actually back in the 1700s was an old stagecoach stop.
Most of the buildings are historic. They go back to the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it's a step back in time.
Smithville locals take great pride in conserving the rich history of their beloved town and the area's most famous denizen, the Jersey Devil. When Europeans first settled the rugged and hostile wilderness of the mid-Atlantic, they encountered unfamiliar and sometimes violent creatures. Because of their puritanical beliefs, they often assigned demonic qualities to the unfamiliar animals, assuming they were minions of the devil. These stories were passed down from generation to generation. But some say stories of the Jersey Devil were being told even before European settlers arrived here.
The Native Americans who lived in this area were already talking about some kind of a strange creature that lived out in the Pine Barrens. And some people say that they even avoided this area. They lived along the coast and they lived in the Delaware Valley, but they didn't really penetrate into the Pine Barrens a whole lot. Apparently, they believed that this thing was some kind of a spirit being.
The Native Americans even held a sacred ceremony honoring a creature they called Masing, or protector of the forest animals. During the ceremony, tribe members would wear a very distinctive costume.
The costume consisted of a dark cloak, and the mask had great big eyes and horns coming out, and a long tail, and some kind of structures to look like wings.
Masing may have been the very first manifestation of this flying cryptid. But the most popular rendition of the Jersey Devil story begins in 1735 in a cramped cabin where a woman named Mother Leeds was raising her 12 children.
Mother Leeds lived in a small cabin in the pines. She was overwhelmed by taking care of 12 children. And when she found out that she was expecting the 13th child, the unlucky 13th, she cried out in frustration, "I hope it's a devil."
On the night when old Mother Leeds was going to give birth to her 13th child, everyone seems to agree on this fact. There was a terrible, terrible thunderstorm outside.
On a dark and particularly stormy night, Mother Leeds is said to have delivered her child. But was it a boy or a beast?
When he came out, he was a devil, supposedly with wings and hoof feet.
Horrified by what she may have done, Mother Leeds wished she could take back the curse she placed on her youngest child. But it was too late.
Some of the versions indicate that after the Jersey Devil was born, he actually ate up all of Mother Leeds' other children.
Oral historian Russell Juelg passes down the local tales of the Jersey Devil to eager listeners.
And he started flying all around in the room and scaring everybody. And finally, he flew out the window, or perhaps up the chimney, and went out to live in the swamps and marshes of the Pine Barrens.
And some say it's still here. The legend of the Jersey Devil inspires fear and keeps most people out of the ominous Pine Barrens. Even Harry Leeds, an area local who may be a descendant of the notorious Mother Leeds.
Even myself being a member of the Leeds family and related to the Jersey Devil, I'd never venture into the Pine Barrens by myself at nighttime.
Harry believes he has seen the Jersey Devil in person almost 300 years after his wretched birth.
As I approached the dam here, he was right down here in the bottom of this river. And when you encounter the devil, all you could see is those piercing eyes. And I tell you, I was scared and I took off. I'm sure that it was the devil.
Harry Leeds is not the only one to have a personal encounter with the Jersey Devil. Hundreds of sightings have been reported here for nearly 3 centuries.
Lots and lots of people have reported hearing or seeing a bizarre creature out here that nobody can explain.
But is the Jersey Devil simply an unidentified animal that has been vilified by a fearful community?
A lot of weird things happened in the Pinelands. There were people that went into the Pinelands and never came out. And that's where the devil got its reputation.
Fact or fiction, the devil's reputation inspires fear in the hearts of many residents. Coming up, what happens when Jersey Devil hunters become the hunted? And later, another winged creature terrorizes a West Virginia town.
I'm really afraid to talk too much about it. I'm afraid it'll bring it back.
For centuries, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey have been the fabled home of a cryptid known as the Jersey Devil. Sightings of the devil have come in terrifying waves, gripping local communities with fear.
In January of 1909, the Jersey Devil was seen all over the Delaware Valley, in major urban areas. People went out looking for the Jersey Devil. Some people locked themselves in their houses. In the 1930s, the Jersey Devil was seen in the rural areas outside of Philadelphia. Posses were formed.
Some locals say the devil is a deformed man, cursed at birth, and doomed to live out his life alone in the woods. Others have more practical explanations.
Someone had proposed a theory that Jersey Devil sightings were really the result of a flock of cranes that had passed through the area. And, you know, a lot of people point to the fact that this is an area where the eastern cougar was known to live. And so when you hear that loud shriek or whatever, you might be hearing a cougar or perhaps a bobcat or some other animal.
Some sightings can be explained, but the ones that can't keep the mystery of the devil alive. The only way to resolve this mystery is to track the devil down. And tonight, local storyteller Russell Juelg intends to do just that on his Jersey Devil hunt.
The Jersey Devil hunt is a long-standing tradition in South Jersey. And a lot of times it's done informally, where, you know, people will just go out in the woods just for a little spooky adventure. People come, play music, roast hot dogs, marshmallows. I retell the legend of the Jersey Devil, and then we just go off down the little trails in the dark to see if we can be lucky enough to see this thing.
The light-hearted mood turns tense as the hunters prepare for the journey ahead.
Listen to me carefully, because it's important that you pay attention to what you see and hear. What I want you to do, for instance, is be looking up into the tops of the trees for any strange shapes or forms that you might see, or any strange movements, and see if there's like a pair of yellowish, greenish spots of light. That would be his eyes, okay? If we do see the Jersey Devil, all we're gonna do is hold still and watch him to see what he does.
Oh, we were goners.
That's people's footprints there, right?
No, but it was like big footprints, like a bat. See?
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
The legend of the Jersey Devil has become woven into the fabric of the New Jersey Pine Barrens. Nighttime devil hunts and campfire stories help keep the mystery alive. But the devil wasn't always a creature to be feared. In the native legend of Masing, the Jersey Devil was thought to be a protector of the Pine Barrens.
From 1735 to 1909, the Jersey Devil was known as the Leeds Devil. The legend, as it was handed down to me for the last 70 years, was by my family. The legend was really that the devil was sort of a kind person. He looked out for the interests of the area. He liked this area, and he liked the Pinelands.
While the Jersey Devil sighting may be a good omen, a personal encounter is still a terrifying experience. Soon after Fran Coppola bought the Smithville Inn, she met the Jersey Devil himself.
The night I saw the Jersey Devil was really eerie. You have to remember it was January, it was cold, it was dusk, it was starting to get dark, and I had to empty the trash. It was right on this wall. I was emptying the trash right over here, and I felt a presence. Like, ooh, it just gives me shivers when I think about it. So I turned around and I saw it was right on this wall, right here, these huge, kind of looked like a wingspan. I didn't see a face. I didn't see a face. I saw a figure, a shadow, a presence.
Terrified, Fran turned and ran away, but her fear soon gave way to a feeling of calm.
For some reason, I felt peace. I wasn't so afraid. I just felt it was the Jersey Devil coming to protect.
We may never know the true nature of the Jersey Devil. It could be an elusive animal like the legendary Thunderbird, or a mutated human damned at birth, a protector of the forests, or just a really good campfire story. But the Jersey Devil isn't the only winged creature that has captured the imagination of travelers, locals, and cryptozoologists alike. Next, we'll travel to the remote hills of West Virginia, where another creepy creature hovers over a small town.
When it flapped its wings, the wings hit each side of the car, and it scratched the paint off the car.
And later, find out what's been keeping the citizens of Point Pleasant from going out at night.
Everybody was on edge here in Point Pleasant. Miles and miles of cars would be seen every night in TNT area, basically a witch hunt.
In the 1960s, Point Pleasant, West Virginia was just an ordinary small town.
Point Pleasant was a quiet little town, mostly a manufacturing and a farming community. Not too much excitement, just Mayberry, if you will.
Everybody knew their neighbors and helped out each other in time of need.
But residents saw something on the night of November 15th, 1966, that changed this small town forever.
I'm really afraid to talk too much about it. I'm afraid it'll bring it back.
For Linda Scarberry, the evening of November 15th started out ordinarily enough. Just a typical Tuesday night in Point Pleasant.
My boyfriend and I just recently got married, and the couple with us had just recently got married. And we went up into the TNT area. It's a place where all the kids gathered. And we had drag racing and people going parking. And it's a place for all the kids in town to gather.
Nicknamed TNT, the area was actually an abandoned weapons factory from World War II. After a night of cruising at the TNT, the pair of couples decided to head home.
And about 11:30 that night, we started home and come around the road by the powerhouse. And when we went over a little knoll where the lights shone on the powerhouse, and this thing was standing there.
What the couple saw was no ordinary animal.
It was over 7 foot tall, had the body of a man, and the great big wings that come down over like that and drug the ground. And you couldn't take your eyes off of its eyes long enough to see the face. The eyes was real red, a different color red than I've ever seen. The eyes just kind of hypnotized you.
Paralyzed by fear, they waited for their chance to flee.
We took off pretty fast to the main highway and got to Route 62 and started towards town.
But further down the road, they encountered the creature again.
It had beat us to this curve right down below a TNT area. It was sitting up on a billboard. When our lights shined on it, it stayed long enough for us to see it. It spread its wings a little bit, went up in the air, and then started flying down the road over top of the car. When it flapped its wings, the wings hit each side of the car, and it scratched the paint off the car. We'd seen a dead dog laying along the road, but it was like a big German Shepherd. When we decided to go back up, the dog was gone, and we all got kind of scared.
Thinking they too could be prey for the fearsome creature, the group went straight to the police.
They didn't believe us. They said we was crazy, that we was up there drinking or on drugs.
But this wasn't the first encounter with a strange creature in this part of West Virginia. About 100 miles northeast of Point Pleasant, a man named Merrill Partridge had a similar sighting.
On the night of November 14th, 1966, In a small town named Salem, West Virginia, Mr. Partridge claimed that he saw red rotating lights in the field next to his house.
Later, Mr. Partridge read a newspaper article about the red-eyed monster in Point Pleasant, and there was one detail in Linda Scarberry's first-hand account that caught his attention. On the night Mr. Partridge saw the red lights, his German Shepherd went missing, never to be seen again. Could this be the same dog Linda Scarberry saw lying 100 miles away in Point Pleasant? He phoned the Point Pleasant police, and what many thought was a teenage hoax was now serious business.
He had a large German Shepherd that went by the name of Bandit. The dog immediately began barking and ran outside, out into a field that was adjacent to the house. The dog was never seen again.
Another report started coming in, of people seeing it. And, I mean, you could tell that they were serious, that they had seen something.
The buzz surrounding the big bird, as it was dubbed at the time, soon turned to hysteria.
People sort of stayed in the house at night. They didn't come out. They didn't let young children out in the evening, fear that it might pick them up and fly off with them.
Reports were colorful and plentiful, and locals were living in constant fear of this unknown cryptid. One of the reporters covering the story was a fan of the Batman cartoon series and nicknamed the creature Mothman. And a legend was born.
Everybody was on edge here in Point Pleasant. You had people seeing this large winged creature in the TNT area. Miles and miles of cars would be seen every night in TNT area, basically a witch hunt.
There were newspaper articles about it, and everyone packed up in their car and grabbed the kids and went out to the TNT area to look for the big bird.
There were probably about 100 reported sightings of the Mothman in the TNT area. My speculation is there's probably another 100 people who never went to the authorities and were either afraid of being humiliated or made fun of or ridiculed in some way.
Rumors began to circulate, and many residents reported sightings of other strange visitors in Point Pleasant, like men in black.
The men in black were here, and the helicopter would come in one night. The next day, the men in black showed up in the black car with the black tinted windows.
But why were the men in black lurking around the small town of Point Pleasant? And who were they? Reporters began to investigate. One such reporter was named Mary Heyer.
Mary Heyer was a reporter for the Athens Messenger out of Ohio and had an office right here in Point Pleasant. She was abreast of all the daily events that happened here and kept everybody informed.
But Mary may have known too much.
She was quite frightened over certain things that were happening at the time. The men in black especially, these were people that would frequent this office and try to get her not to report on the happenings around here.
Many believe the men in black were top-secret government agents there to investigate the Mothman mystery. Still others claim the men in black were involved in some sort of complicated cover-up.
We saw a lot of stuff back in them woods that we can't explain today.
No one will ever know for sure, but over the course of a year, over 200 sightings of the Mothman were reported. And as journalist Mary Heyer continued to investigate, the mysterious men in black continued their eerie presence in Point Pleasant. But all that changed on the evening of December 15th, 1967, when a tragedy struck.
Everyone really was in such shock.
Next up, was this catastrophic accident part of the Mothman prophecy?
People claim to have seen a large winged creature flying across the river back and forth.
The town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia was terrorized by a creature called the Mothman. Hundreds of witnesses came forward with reports about an enormous bird-like creature with a human body. Was it simply an animal or a cryptid unbeknownst to science? Many theories abound as to what this creature really was, how it lived, and why it was terrorizing Point Pleasant. Many of the sightings were near an abandoned weapons manufacturing plant that locals called TNT. This secluded space was the perfect home for the Mothman to hide.
This is the site of the Mason County Fair, but back in the 60s it was the site of a massive plant here probably 5 stories high. That was where the Mothman lived, or actually was sighted many times.
Surrounding the plant is the McClintock Wildlife Refuge, where a web of old tunnels exists beneath the heavy brush. Many say this accounts for where the Mothman would flee during the town-wide searches.
We're standing right in front of an igloo. It's where they stored the high explosives. And as you can see when we walk in here, it's pretty well hidden. It's something that you couldn't easily see from the air. This is one of the places where they thought the Mothman was hiding. And as you can see, just about anything could get in here and hide. Definitely a pretty creepy place. And it's hard to tell what we could run into in here. The Mothman, sure.
But what is the Mothman? Many say it's a product of its environment. The area around TNT held toxic chemicals, and because of its proximity to what is now the McClintock Wildlife Refuge, many speculated that the Mothman was a mutated bird, or a government experiment gone terribly wrong.
Then the only thing they could figure is that some child, some animal, or some bird got into those chemicals up there, because that was the old chemical manufacturing plant. And it mutated from some kind of form.
I think they were checking to see how much radiation was in the TNT. They might have thought that was why Mothman got so big.
But however the Mothman materialized, many citizens of Point Pleasant agree that the creature was in some way connected to the horrible tragedy that struck around Christmas in 1967.
December 15th, 1967 is a day that changed Point Pleasant and everyone who lived here. At about 5 o'clock during rush hour, during the holiday Christmas season, there was a lot of traffic, a lot of stress on the bridge.
The bridge was full. We used it every day. Everybody used it every day.
Sometime around the 5 o'clock rush hour, the Silver Bridge suddenly collapsed. "46 people lost their lives."
Naturally, since the Silver Bridge collapsed during the Mothman activity, some people felt that there was a direct connection. I have actually interviewed people who claim to have seen a large winged creature flying across the river back and forth before the collapse.
The shocking event affected everyone in Point Pleasant.
A little girl in my 3rd grade class went down on the bridge. There was an empty seat in front of me for the rest of the year. That was a very vivid memory of mine.
Over the following days and weeks, as the town of Point Pleasant grieved over the tragedy, Mothman sightings diminished, but the creature's legacy lingered.
One of the things that people really remember about Mothman is that it's really connected with the collapse of the Silver Bridge. That collapse happened on December 15th, 1967. And the first sighting of Mothman is tied to November 15th, 1966, 13 months previously.
Cryptozoologist Loren Coleman believes, like the Banshee legend, the appearance of the Mothman is meant to warn of grave danger.
So a lot of the Mothman stories really can be connected to some kind of curse. Specifically, one line of research that I've done is what's called the death curse, or the Mothman death list. 84 people connected with Mothman, with the sightings, with the movies, have died because of their association with Mothman.
In 2002, a movie based loosely on the Mothman legend came out, and according to Loren Coleman, the curse continued.
I just kept seeing something sinister to this.
To this day, the Mothman phenomenon remains a mystery. For some, this cryptid is nothing more than a myth. For others, Mothman is as alive today as he was in the mid-60s.
Mothman never left Point Pleasant. I've talked to people as recently as 6 months ago that told me about sightings around there.
For those who've come face to face with a cryptid creature, the experience can be life-altering.
Well, it's completely changed my life. I'm a nervous wreck. I don't like to look outside windows after dark. I won't go past windows if I don't have to. And I know what I saw, and I know what it looked like. I wish we'd never seen it. I wish we had been somebody else, because I do think it will come back sooner or later.
Could Mothman, the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster be very real creatures lurking in the shadows until they are discovered by science? Or are they the stuff of legends, woven deep into the fabric of each community and beyond? As long as there are eyewitness accounts of cryptids, enthusiasts will continue to tell their tales, and cryptozoologists will continue their pursuit for the truth.
Here we have a legitimate scientific study of animals that are unknown, of animals that might yet be discovered.
From the Northern California forests to the depths of a Scottish loch, from the Pine Barrens of New Jersey to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, cryptozoologists search the globe hoping to get to the bottom of these cryptid sightings. And as the scientific community has learned from the shocking discoveries of the giant squid and okapi, these myths and legends may one day become reality. Until then, townspeople living on the fringes of the wild will just have to continue to lock their doors.